rupees. His son, who is 10-year-old, works in a tea shop and he gets around some 300 rupees. So this is the total income of the family as around 23 plus 3, 2600 rupees. 6 members have to survive, where the younger child, girl, who is 8 years old, looks after the other 2 small children, and he should also send some amount to his aged parents who stay in the village. Moving on to another example, in the Meerut region of Uttar Pradesh is an example of rural poverty. We have Laka Singh, the head of the family. He doesn't own any land. So from this, it's very clear for us that when we doesn't own any land, we have to work under any rich landlord or the farm who owns large amount of farmlands. So he is an agricultural laborer or a farm laborer. He gets hardly paid of rupees 50 per day whenever he gets the work, and he stays in the kacha hut. He stays in the kacha hut, which is very far away from the village, and he was when 2 years old. His father passed away, who was actually suffering from tuberculosis. His father has to live his life because the lack of the proper treatment for the disease. And this boy, Laka Singh, started his earning at the age of 10 years, which means the situations of the families, now his mother also is suffering with tuberculosis, where the expenses could not be met for her medical treatment right now. For them, having new clothes is a luxury. When the old clothes fade away, then only they get the new clothes. The similar cases even with the family of Ram Saran. Ram Saran's family also never buys clothes. They also have hand down clothes only, which means like they have just 2 pairs of cloth. One when they put on, one when they utilize it, they wash it. So the same case here also. Shoes are a luxury for them. Now let us list down what are the common similarities that we find here. When a family is not wealthy or settled, you generally find landlessness in that family. Yes, Laka Singh doesn't own any land. Unemployment, lack of proper employment in an organized sector. We find it in the case of Ram Saran as well as in the case of Laka Singh. The size of the family. The size of the family, Ram Saran's family would be a good example, because his family has 6 members. The income is very less and could not meet the requirements even per day complete meal for the entire family members. And illiteracy. Maybe this all could be one of the reasons why, because they all are mostly illiterates and they could not get any good jobs which are required to break the shell of poverty for them. And the child labor. We have discussed that the case of Ram Saran or the case of Laka Singh, we find people who started their earnings with the age of 10 years old. Even when they were actually supposed to be studying in the schools, they never entered the school premises. So these are the factual situations in our country. The poverty is the most serious challenge which has to be addressed very seriously. The helplessness which is found in every corner of the situation of poverty. Poverty itself remarks for us that there is some helplessness found there. There is something which could not be overlooked. Father suffered with TB and passed away. Mother now suffering with TB, and there are no helping hands to support Laka Singh, or Laka Singh could not provide proper treatment for his mother. This helplessness is found in every corner. Here, if you look at here, in Ram Saran's family, Ram Saran's parents live in a village. He gets barely some amount of money, which in that itself he has to share some amount to his aged parents. Really, these all are difficult tasks. Now let us find out how, and the social scientists started to analyze the condition of poverty. As we discussed the condition of poverty, now we will understand poverty from the different perspective. The people, especially the poor people, are looked down in everywhere, in the government offices, in the railway stations, in the post offices, every corner in the society, they are looked down. That is the reason why Gandhiji truly said that India will become truly independent when the poor will not be suffering, when he can live a happy life. When a poor can live a happy life, when his poverty ends. Now moving on to understand poverty in the view of the social scientists. The social scientists always look with the different parameters. We use the word indicators or parameters to understand the national income, the other incomes, to analyze them, to the GDP, GNP, all these factors. But now we are analyzing the poverty conditions through indicators. If these are found, definitely they are suffering with some poverty. Let us see here. Illiteracy, the first and the fundamental reason why many of the people are caught in the clutches of poverty is illiteracy. Because of illiteracy, many people are not able to break the shell. They are not able to cross the vicious circle which is circled around them. They are not able to break it down because they lack the ability to break that one and enter into the new phase and to grab some opportunity for them. Later, the lack of the general resistance. What is general resistance? As a social meaning, we feel that general resistance means resisting some kind of social inequality. No, we are nowhere discussing about the social equality or inequality here. We are actually discussing about the resistance of the human body against the diseases. That lacking of the general resistance of their human bodies is due to malnutrition. Do you believe that here in our country, as per the latest calculations, 23 million people are suffering with malnutrition or lack of malnutrition? The malnutrition has been a serious concern because the families are not able to afford to have a complete meal at least once a day. Because of this, the requirement of the body is not fulfilled up to the required mark. When it is not able to fulfill the required mark or the required limit, definitely the body will start to become deteriorating because the body needs some energy to maintain itself. When the energy is not supplied, one day it can manage, 2 days it can manage, but as the days go on, the body becomes weak and becomes vulnerable to the diseases. So this is another important indicator that these people are suffering with poverty. Next, health care as an extension to malnutrition. Once they are malnutritioned, later the next succeeding factor is they get some health diseases affected to them. Once they are getting health diseases affected and they are already malnutritioned, they do not have proper money even to have food properly, so they don't have proper awareness to go to a hospital. Even if somehow they approach to a hospital, they approach to a public hospital where the treatments are really horrible, and this further leads to horrible and the worst situations. And availability of the jobs. As I mentioned earlier, when there is no literacy rate, there is no possibility for you to get a better job. When there is no chance for you to get a better job, you are always struck with a line where you cannot cross that one. You are forced to work for some work what you know, or to at very less wages, where there is no possibility for you to grow beyond that limit because of lack of education that is directly showing the effect on your job opportunities. And the most important factors which are looking very simple nowadays but really very difficult: water, drinking water, pure drinking water getting is nowadays really very difficult. And that to the people, those who are living in the poor slums or bastis, they get water 2 days once, and that time we find long queues of people standing in lines or people traveling for miles to get water. These kind of situations really show that they are suffering with a lot of problems. And last but not the least, the sanitation problems. When we are living in a outer part of the city and where everything is left out, and you stay at a place where it is very less cost, no proper drainage network, where every dust will be dumped there and which is unsanitized, so you are prone to get diseases. Now, the illiteracy, the lack of general resistance due to malnutrition, healthcare, lack of healthcare facilities, lack of job opportunities, water, lack of water supply, and unhygienic conditions, lack of sanitation. These all are the indicators to say that this particular social group is under the poverty levels. Poverty is something where the group of people are denied to be having all the facilities. It's not denied by some group or some section. It is because of their economic condition, they are not able to have proper living, proper place to live, proper facilities to get. This can also be associated with this caste system, which is being existent and dominant in our Indian society, where in certain caste people are not allowed to have social interaction with the other groups of people, and they are forced to live at the corners of the villages or the towns. This can be associated with that, and maybe because of the historical or the cultural links which we have this poverty on a very large scale. And coming on to vulnerability, the poverty region is completely vulnerable. Vulnerability is found here. The vulnerable nature for the poverty people is crystal clear. What is this actually vulnerable? Vulnerable is nothing but it's a state where the impact of any unforeseen incidents fell on their lives, the impact would be very large. I'll tell you an example. We have two families. One is a middle class family, the other is a poor family. The middle class family has a job where they get a fixed payment. The poor family works with a small shop or something where they work and they earn something. When suddenly some floods come or some natural disasters come, the middle class family also will lose the property. The poor category people also will lose their assets. The poor are running a small shop where they get the shop also destroyed and the house also destroyed. Well, in the middle class, yes, they also will get damaged, but within a couple of months, he can raise some loan because of his employment and he would be able to remodify the house. When it comes to the poor, they become more difficult for them to rebuild themselves, and they again fall in a circle by taking some loan amount for high rate of interest to rebuild that one. Again, in repaying the loan itself, the entire process going on like this. So these conditions, like the condition of being difficult to rebuild once if any natural disaster attacks them or any problem comes to them, that condition or the situation is known as vulnerable. You are affected at a severe rate when compared to the other people. Yes, all get affected with that when any natural problem comes, or even when we get the software boom coming down, we get the loss of the jobs also. They lose their jobs. The impact on a particular family would be more where they may be prone to poverty. When there is no such kind of situation, the effect will be there, but the effect will be comparatively less. The effect of being severe on the families is known as vulnerable, or vulnerability is closely associated with the poverty also. Now moving on to understand exactly what or how the poverty goes, we generally use the word poverty line. There is a certain limit. There are certain minimum requirements which every individual needs in order to maintain himself as well as okay in the society. So for that they have calculated the minimum requirement. That minimum requirement is set as the standard line to categorize whether the people are coming under the poverty line or above the poverty line. So the poverty line is nothing but a standard basis determined like whoever is not able to earn at least this much of amount for the daily requirements will definitely be coming under the poverty line. Now see here, poverty line means the minimum level where every individual, let us take in India, if you have a car, it is considered as a luxury. In United States, if you own a car, you are just a normal person. If you don't own a car, you are a poor person. So that kind of variation is still present between the countries and the countries. And moving on to understand the ground reality in our country, we have the minimum requirements like food, clothing, shelter, footwear, educational requirement, health facilities. These all at the minimum level when it is required, and if he is able to meet the requirements, then he is considered as he is above the poverty line. If he fails to meet the requirements of these, he is considered as he comes under the category of the below poverty line. As per the statistics given for us, in 2000, the government of India, using the National Sample Survey Authority organization's network to study, they determined what is the minimum energy level required for the people in the rural areas and in the urban areas. In rural areas, we need nearly 2400 kilocalories of energy for them, and in the urban areas, we need 2100 kilocalories of energy required for them, which means in rural areas, they do little bit more physical hard work when compared to the urban areas. So basing on the requirement of the energy, now the food intake will be calculated. So basing on the intake of the food, the amount of money required would be estimated. That is, in rural areas, they need 328 rupees for an individual and 454 rupees in the urban areas. If they have 5 members in the family, the rural areas, they require 1640 rupees, while in the urban areas, they require 2270 rupees. This all are the estimates and calculations done by National Sample Survey Authority Organization of India. And if you go to the global study of poverty, the World Bank has determined the minimum requirement per day they should have or own at least $1. If they are not able to earn $1, they are considered as poor people. Poverty line is nothing but the minimum standard line set to standardize whether the people are able to meet the minimum requirements in their day-to-day life or not, like food, clothing, shelter, medical and health facilities, as well as educational requirements. If they are not able to fulfill any of these, they fall under the category of below poverty line. As per the statistics given in 2000 year, it is 2400 kilocalories of energy required for the people living in rural areas, whereas 2100 kilocalories in the urban areas. 328 is the minimum requirement of amount for every individual in the rural areas. 454 is the minimum in the urban areas. 1640 for every 5 members in the rural area families, and 2270 is for the urban areas. Now we generally get a doubt why there is a lot of variation in the prices when it comes to the rural areas and the urban areas. In the rural areas, the commodities prices are considerably less when compared to the prices of the products which are in the cities. Why do you think so? Because in cities we have additional taxes levied on the products, so that the cost of the same product varies at the rural areas and in the cities or in the urban areas. So this is the minimum basic or poverty line which determines whether the population falls in the category of poor or not. India's poverty estimates. We have till now discussed what is poverty line. No, after we finalize the standard limit where we consider the other people as below poverty line or the above poverty line. The above poverty line, we don't have any problems, so we do not concentrate much about the above poverty line people. Poverty line and below the poverty line, who are at the border and below that, we will now have a look at the figures. In 1973, the figure was 55% of people are still suffering with poverty. As the years passed on, in 1993, it came down to 36%, which means there was a drop rate of nearly 19% in the 2 decades. But the stunning factor is the number of population or the amount of population coming under the category of poverty during these 2 decades was 320 million, which means 32 crores. When we look at the statistics, it is 55% to 36%, that is 19%. Down we can see here. Then why is it same amount of people remained and the poverty continued in these people's lives? Before answering this, we will discuss what happened the next. In 1993 to 2000, there was a rapid downfall and 16% has come down, and by year 2000, it is only 20% of the population. And now, as per the latest calculations, the poverty line people are now coming under just 26 crore people. As we mentioned in the earlier part of the lesson, that 1/5 of India's population still depends on or comes under the category of poverty. I asked you a question before this. Why did you think, or why do you think that though there was a good downfall in the poverty levels as per the statistics, still 32 crore people in India remained under the poverty line? We need to remember here the fundamental point that in 1973, what is the population? In 1993, what is the population? According to the population of 1973, that is 55% of them are coming under the poverty line. But when it comes to 1993, the population has increased drastically and the percentage of poverty line members are reduced, but the same amount of members of the people are coming under the poverty line people. The logic is very simple. When we have 100 people, if 5 people are coming under the poverty line, we say 5%. When we have 200 people and 10 people are coming under the poverty line, then also we say 5% only. So the percentage is same, but the population is increasing. In the similar way, here population has increased, percentage has reduced, number of people coming under the poverty line remain nearby to 36 crores only for nearly 2 decades. Afterwards, we can see a good downfall and it came only up to 26 crores as per the present day calculations. Now moving on to understand what are the most vulnerable groups which are prone to get affected or fall very easily under the category of poverty lines. Let us see here the important vulnerable groups as per the statistics given by National Sample Survey Organization, that is the scheduled castes, scheduled tribe, the rural agricultural household workers, the urban casual labor. These are the 4 major categories which are mostly influenced by the poverty. What is the meaning of the vulnerable? As I mentioned earlier, vulnerability, the more the impact would be, yes, there could be any problem for anyone. There is no one who will not have any problems at all. But when the problems come or step into their lives, the impact of that problem on their lives would be 100 times more when compared to the other people's life. That kind of situation is called vulnerability. That vulnerable groups are scheduled caste groups and the scheduled tribes groups. The scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe groups are actually, when we look at the Manu Dharma Shastra or the fourfold caste system mentioned in the ancient books, which was still existent till the later part of the Indian independence struggle, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. The SC and the ST category comes under the lowest strata, that is Sudras. For many centuries, these people were not given social equality at all. These groups are considered as untouchable groups. They are denied of common dining, entrance into the common public places, even entry into the temple was highly restricted for these groups for many centuries. It is only after India got independence and the constitution was in place, the untouchability was declared as a crime and a sin. It's a punishable offense. From then onwards, the rethinking on the caste system was started. Now moving aside from the regular historical and the cultural look of caste system, now these particular caste groups are having the reservations provided by the government to uplift them so that the inequality which is present in the society would be equated if they are economically upgraded. But even the reservations of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes can be utilized effectively only if these groups people are educated. Here, filling their small tummies has been difficult task for them. How could they think of getting educated and later further think of doing some job? So it's a very far dream for them and it is very far from reality. Now moving on to the lesson here, the SC and ST people or this group people only mostly turn out into the categories of rural, agricultural, household and urban, casual labor. In rural areas, if they are not able to find any job for them, any work for them in the field because of the seasonal unemployment or whatever would be the reason, they simply take turn to the urban areas and here they become the urban casual labor. And most of the times we have these all categories of people coming from SC categories and the ST categories only. So the SC and the ST categories are the most vulnerable groups of poverty, and in India we have 26% of completely coming under poverty and 51 out of every 100 people are coming under the poverty line of scheduled tribal people. Tribal people are mostly habituated to live in the forest areas. So that is the reason why they find it very difficult to come and do some work. Leaving their forest is a very difficult task for them. As now forests are encroached by various industries, by the government policies or by various other means, now there is no other alternative left out for them. So they started to move towards the urban areas or into the nearby villages to find some alternative. That's why you find more number of people in the scheduled tribes coming under the category of below poverty line. And coming to the scheduled caste people, here only in scheduled caste you can get a considerable number, that is 43% of the scheduled caste are coming under the category of the poverty line. The urban casual labor accounts for every 100 people, 50 people are under the below poverty line. We can here discuss when we talk about the urban casual labor, a rickshaw puller who from morning to evening he pulls the rickshaw and he earns around some 50 or 100 rupees hardly, and he has to feed up his family, his wife, his children, and he has to take care of himself and he has to pay the rent of the rickshaw what he brought. So at the end of the day he may not even get 50 rupees also. So how can he manage their responsibilities and all? So most of the casual labor are leading a life like this. So they are really in a pitiful condition. So 50 out of every 100 come under the category of the poverty line. Rural household workers, those are working in the agricultural fields, come, they also 50 out of every 100 are coming under the poverty line. But this has come down drastically by 1990s. The levels of the poverty line have come down seriously by 1990s, nearly up to 20% in all the sectors because of the government policies or the encouragements given by the government or whatever it is. But finally, the levels of poverty are slowly coming down. Now moving on to see the other side of poverty line, that is, we categorized all the people, those who come under the poverty, into this broad structure. But women, children, infants and old people are the most suffered groups when it comes to poverty line. Women are not given equal status. They are not allowed to access to the family incomes. Children who are very small are malnutrition, and aged people who may be suffering with some disease, they do not get a proper treatment meted to them. So they have to bear the pain of the disease what they are suffering. So the children, women and aged people are the real vulnerable groups when it comes to the poverty affected families. In India, in every state, we don't have the same percentage of people coming under the poverty line. We have the percentage varying from state to state. Let us see what are the details of that. Here, the proportion of the people suffering with poverty are not same in every corner of our country. There are certain states, like 20 states and some union territories, where the poverty is very less when compared to the national average. Let us take the national average be 26%. So in some states it is less than 26, means 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. So which clearly shows for us that these states have very less number of people affected with poverty. Some states have double than the national average, more than the national average, where there are more people who are suffering with poverty. Let us check the details now. The states like Orissa and Bihar, we have the highest number of people coming under the poverty line, that is 47% of people coming under the poverty line. 47%, which is nearly 50% of the population truly depends or comes under the category of poverty line. Assam, Tripura and Uttar Pradesh, where it is slightly better when compared to Orissa and Bihar. So it is only 43%, but it is even not good. The national average is just only 26%. Now moving on to further the states which have upgraded their population and moved them or raised them from the poverty level to the above to the higher middle class levels. Those are the Jammu and Kashmir, Arunachal Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, West Bengal, Haryana and Punjab. These states have high growth rates in agriculture. They did not do any technological revolution. They did not get any industries or any other sectors well developed. They have implemented the technology in agriculture through green revolution. They brought certain changes and they have achieved high agricultural output. With that, they raised the standard of living of the people, because 70% of India lives in villages. So when the villages are raised up, automatically the below poverty lines all will be coming down. That's what it happened here. And some more measures taken by West Bengal, like the land reforms, land reorganization bills, which have redistributed the land for the landless poor, has brought them above from the below poverty line. And also the public distribution done by the states of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu has been a significant factors which contributed to the reduction of poverty in these states. So still we have many states who are suffering with poverty. The people in these states are vulnerable to poverty. Till now we have seen the poverty line estimates within our country, within the states between the country. Now we will discuss how is the poverty around the globe, that is the global poverty scenario. The global poverty scenario also was different in different countries, as the World Bank has set up that the number of people who could not earn at least $1 per day will be considered as below poverty line people. Now the population figures are really very drastically down in some countries, which are now going ahead in some countries. What are those countries? In which part there is a great decline and which part there is a high rise, we will find out now. The $1 was a minimum criteria to determine whether the population is under the poverty line or above the poverty line. It is 28% in 1990 and it has reduced substantially to 21% by 2001. This reduction has been 7%, which was really remarkable in just a decade. And the number of people are really very less when compared to the below poverty line. But let us look at the regions where we have the poverty line more. In China, in 1981, we have 606 million people coming under the poverty line. 606, which is nearly 60 crore people coming under poverty line. Now moving on to 2001 census, China has brought down the people from the poverty line. They have raised the standard of living of the people by investing on the human resources, by educating the people, by providing opportunities to the people. The figure has come down to 212 million, that is 21.2 crore population. There is a reduction of nearly 40 crore people from the poverty line. They have raised their standard of living and reached to above a poverty line, and where they have a good amount of food and they are able to fulfill the minimum requirements for them. So in China they have achieved in a very large scale. And moving on to Southeast Asia, Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Bangkok, all these countries also achieved some considerable reduction in the poverty percentages. And moving on to Africa. In Africa, we have in 1981, 41% of the families or the population coming under poverty, but today the number has gone up to 46% after 20 years, that is in 2001. Only in this region we find the poverty levels are going up and up, because there the efforts are very less, and always the countries are suffering with some or the other revolts or the revolutions. Now moving on further, in the Southeast Asia, where India falls in the Southeast Asian group, like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka. These all together they have taken as a group, and they have taken the calculation of the percentage of people or the poverty line, below poverty line people, that is 475 million in 1981. The number has come down to 428 million, nearly 50 million people have come down. But the figures are not so impressive when it is compared to China or when it is compared to other Southeast Asian countries. Still there is a lot of requirement of people to come above the poverty line. And so the millennium goal, it is in the year 2000, the millennium year, the United Nations held its meeting and fixed the goal for the millennium that in the next 15 years, the level of people living in the poverty, below poverty line, has to be reduced to half. That is, from 21% it has to be reduced to 10%. If you look at the Latin American countries, the below poverty line people are always between 10 to 15% only. It may be varying between the countries, but on an average, if you take all the Latin American countries, it is only 10%, where the poverty is very less. This is a global scenario of poverty. Now we shall discuss what are the basic reasons which have pushed a large number of people in our country to the below poverty lines. There are many reasons. Historical reasons are there, cultural reasons are there, religious reasons are there. Let us find out all together now. See here. The main causes for India's poverty is the British colonial rule. Until the arrival of the Britishers, India was a very rich country filled with lot of natural resources. Here I would like to remember, when Vasco da Gama came to India, he travelled all the way long through the Atlantic Ocean, via Cape of Good Hope. He entered into the Indian Ocean, and he entered into the branches of Indian Ocean, that is Arabian Sea, and touched Calicut in Kerala state right now. So the entire journey cost was, let us put some amount. He realized that the spices which are available in our country, the spices which are used in the masala or all these items, he learned that it is 126th time less when compared to the pepper that is sold in Italy. So he collected huge bags of pepper, and in his return journey he took it all the way back and sold it in the countries of Europe for 60 times the cost of his voyage, which shows that India has a bulk amount of the natural resources which are very rare in the European countries. And India is really rich and prosperous country before the arrival of the foreign rulers to our country. But the advent of the Europeans, the arrival of the Britishers, English East India Company, slowly taking over the power into their hands. In this process of taking over the power into their hands, they have started to derail the entire textile industry, the local traditional industries, and they want to bring the products from their own regions and sell it here with the mercantile policy. So all these went on adding up, as for 200 years India has suffered the British colonial rule, and in these 200 years the Indian economy got drained completely with the efforts and the policies of the Britishers, where the local traditional work style was disturbed. They could not get the right alternatives to find out their opportunities. So from then the situation started, the lack of opportunities, the lack of a market eligibility for them. These all things went on, added up one after the other. Finally, India achieved its independence, but India remained as a backward country. From a very prosperous country, India turned into an agriculturally backward country. That was a historical reason. Now, with this background, the limited opportunities for the people. Yes, the Green Revolution in 1960s, the decade has changed the life of the farmers in many villages of our country. It brought farmers to a very good limelight, and farmers started to make wonders with the high usage of technology, high yielding variety of seeds and everything. But the influence was limited. It was curtailed itself to only to the villages. It was restricting within the village sector only. When it comes to the city region or the urban region or the towns or those who don't have lands, they could not reap the fruits of this one. They could not get any benefits of the Green Revolution. So the opportunities are really very limited. So whoever migrated from the villages to the nearby towns, they have to do certain odd jobs like rickshaw pullers, working as a daily wage labor, working in the small factories, manufacturing units. Very pathetic situation. So the limited opportunities. Income inequalities. As we have seen, the Green Revolution has brought changes in the lives of the villagers. So those who are doing farming, those who own their own land, their income started to go up, while the others, those who are not having fields and those who are agricultural laborers, their income could not go up in par with those as it happened in the Green Revolution movement. The other sectors also, like the non-agricultural sectors, the dairy farming, the transport sector, these started to develop by 1980s. These income also started to get added up for the people. But the people, those who are doing agriculture, those who are doing the non-agricultural sector works, other than these two, the entire population was not able to cope up or meet the requirements. So there has been a lot of difference in the incomes. So the income inequalities started to come up. Unequal distribution of land. Yes, this has been a significant factor. We have only 60% of lands owned by 10% of the population in our country. The rest of the 40% by the rest 90% remaining of the population. 60% controlled by 10, 40% divided between 90%. This unequal distribution of land has created a lot of economic disparity between the people, and this created the gap of haves and the have-nots. And suppose if a person gets 2 acres of land of his own, and if he gets married and if he has 2 children, the land which he has 2 acres will be bifurcated into 2 parts and will be equally distributed to the children. And these children, when they get married and they have 2 children of each, again their lands will be bifurcated. So earlier the land was 2 acres, now it may end up with half acre or no land or some small part of a land. This kind of situations are n in number in our country. This is because the unequal incomes, the agricultural failure, the lack of rains in the appropriate time, all these have added up to increase the people coming into the category of poverty line. And social obligations. Whether you are rich or poor, there are many social obligations. Like for example, when we have any marriages, compulsory there are certain customs which has to be followed. It is an obligation that you need to put a lunch or a dinner to the entire village or your relatives or area. Though you are not in a position to afford it, because of your social prestige, it is a social obligation that in the marriage time you have to organize this. This also has proven burden to many families who are not able to meet the daily requirements. But if in case they are organizing any marriage, they have to take some amount as loan from outside, and then they have to do the social obligation, though they are not capable of doing it. Coming to understand the religious ceremonies, even in the name of the religion also, we have many customs. Like during the Bakrid season or during the Ramzan season in Islam, they have to do fasting and they have to donate something. They have to organize the iftars. These all things, even for us in Ganesh Chaturthi days or during these Dasara vacations, the Dasara days or the Sankranti days, they conduct many day-to-day events which need lot of money. These all are really proven burden to the people who are on the below poverty line. And last but not the least, in villages, those who own small percentage of lands like 1 acre, 2 acres, these people do not have much of their amount as savings. So they are forced to take some amount to buy seeds and fertilizers and pesticides from the rich landlords or the money lenders. These money lenders utilize the situation of these farmers and force them to take for high rate of interest and also compel them to work in their fields. When they take for high rate of interest and when the crops do not yield the good result, they are binding them to give away the entire crop output, and still they have lot of amount in pending to pay for the money lender. So like this, they are falling into a continuous vicious circle where they could not come out. These are some of the factors which forced a large number of people in our country to fall into the clutches of the poverty. They are the British colonial rule, the limited opportunities, income inequalities, unequal distribution of land, social obligations, religious ceremonies, and loans at very high rate of interest. These are some of the important factors which showed their profound influence and forced millions of people to fall into the poverty line. Now, anti-poverty measures taken by the government of India from 1950 to till date. The government has initially planned two major targets. One, to promote the economic growth. Two, to have anti-poverty programs in order to eradicate poverty. First, let us discuss about the promotion of economic growth. Our country has having 3.6% of growth rate till 1980s. From 1950, when India became a republican country, till 1980s, for nearly 3 decades, the economic growth rate was not very good in terms of economy or in terms of providing opportunities to people. It is only after 1980s and 1990s the growth rate has increased from 3.6% to 6%, and it continued for decade and the other decade, which has given a good hope and created huge opportunities for the people in the villages and the other parts of the villages like towns and the cities, where the growth rate has increased rapidly, which has created the opportunity for the people to understand that if we invest in the education, definitely that will give good results for all of us. The results will be benefiting for us in large number. In return, you get huge number of benefits like good opportunities, good jobs. and he will be paid for lifelong. This is discussed, and we can observe these changes even in the poor families. They started to send their boys and girls also to schools. Then they realized what is the importance of education. So in this way, the government's first target of improving or promotion of the economic growth was able to achieve by the end of 80s, and it continued till 90s. Even now, India is having good growth rate. So the economic growth rate in till 1980s could not give a good boost or zoom or boom to the people to grow, because the growth rate was really very less. It's only 3.6%. It is after 1980s and 90s we got the growth rate sustainably growing 6% consistently for a 10 years and the next 10 years, which gave enormous opportunities for the people, which made the people to realize the importance of education, and they started to send their children. Even in the poor families also realize the importance of education. But in the actual reality, there are most number of families in India depending on agriculture. Yes, this has showed a positive sign, but the lives of the people are not guaranteed, because agriculture is not a guaranteed economy. Some years will be really fruitful, but even 1 year of disaster can bring down all their success in the past years. Now, moving on to understand the next important aspect of the government, that is the anti-poverty programs. There are many anti-poverty programs which are initiated to reduce the poverty in our country. Let us see one by one in detail. The list is NREGA, NFWP, PMRY, SGSY, PMGY, AAY. These are the important anti-poverty programs introduced by the government in the last 20 to 25 years. First, National Rural Employment Guarantee Program or Act. This has been started in 2005. According to this act, the government of India ensures 100 days of work in the rural areas where the agriculture or the rains could not come, where there is a severe drought situation. And this was initially started as a pilot project in 200 districts. Later, this will be expanded to the next 600 districts, which are finalized by the government of India with respect to coalition with the state governments. The state governments and the union government are partners in this one. So they create a national rural employment fund by the union government as well as by the state government for the respective states, and they contribute mutually and make this plan effectively implemented. And in coalition with this one, just a year before, National Food for Work program was started in 2004, in which 150 backward districts are selected, and in these districts they started to give work, and instead of giving money for them, they started to give food, grains, wheat, whatever they require as per the work done by them. But once the NREGA program started to get implemented, this NFWP program will be submerged with the project of NREGA. And moving on to the next one, Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana. This is PMRY. This program was started in 1993, and this is for the educated youth to give self-employment for them by providing some loan which is subsidized, and government assures for them so that they can get from the bank loan and they can start their own business or small scale industries, which will give some kind of employment opportunities for them so that they can improve their living standard and can fall out from the clutches of poverty. And next, Samriddhi Grama Samskar Yojana. This is in 1993, where this was initiated to help the social help group or the workers or the women, the self-help group people, and we can help them by giving a mixed loan of bank and government, subsidizing them and providing some opportunity for them to do small cottage industries or small works and help their families to lead some healthy life, because in rural areas we don't find any opportunities for them at all by pickle making, but some opportunity that can be adding on to their lives. And moving on, Pradhan Mantri Gram Yojana. In this program, it was a fantastic plan given in year 2000, where the drinking water, sanitation, roads, infrastructure, the basic facilities of the districts or the villages was a main target to achieve this one. This was started in the year 2000. So there are many plans, even Annapurna Antyodaya Yojana given for the widowed people, a very huge amount of rice so that they need not depend on anybody because they are already deprived class people. So like this, government has started many programs in order to fight the poverty. But why it could not meet the requirements? Because there are many programs, and if you observe closely, all the programs have good intentions, and all the intentions are one or the other going on the same lines. So instead of having so many programs, and the program itself is a bit confusing when it comes to NREGA, NFWP or PMGY, where all are working together in the same lines. So because of so many programs and correlation of all these has intermingled the output, and the effective implementation has got lapsed. It could not reach to the targeted people or the groups of the people. The targeted villages, districts could not get benefited. So the next target of the government now is to effectively implement all these policies, all the programs, and make sure that they will reach to the common people. Which group is targeted for this program? Only that group should get the benefits, so that the poverty levels will definitely come down. This is the main target of the government through its anti-poverty measures. The challenges ahead in order to eradicate poverty. How can we eradicate poverty in our country, and what are the challenges that the country faces now? The first, yes, we all need to acknowledge that the poverty has declined in the past 6 decades in our country, but still we need to control this one. We need to completely eradicate the poverty from our country. For that, what are the steps that need to be taken, and what are the obstacles that we have? That is, when we take the statistics of rural areas and the urban areas, the differences are still very wide. In urban areas, the poverty is nearly 20 to 25%. But when it comes to the rural background, it is nearly 50 to 70% of the population coming under the poverty lines. It's really a lot of disparity. This has to be changed. The gap has to be reduced between the rural and the urban poverty lines. The betterment we can hope in the next 10-15 years. The poverty will definitely reduce in the coming 10 to 15 years. I am not telling any astrology or any fortune. I am just telling you the facts. On basis of what? Because we have high consistent economic growth rate now in our country from the past decade, and this decade also, according to the World Bank estimates, India and China will be the highest economic growth rate countries consistently for this decade. So next, decrease in the population growth. We are not growing at the par very fast when compared to the previous decades. The universalization of primary education has also been a significant step taken by the government for 6 to 14 years of age, and compulsory education provided for them by RTE Act of 2009, which has made it to make them to understand what is the importance of education. And once the people get educated, the children get educated, they will know what is right, what is wrong, what is their capacity, what they can do, what can they achieve, all these things. Women empowerment has also been a larger scale target of the present century. So women are also getting empowered. Indrani Nooyi recently, who got the US Leadership Award, is a good example that women are given chances to grow equally with men and to end the disparity between men and women. Boys and girls disparity still has been at a very good high rate. Now it is being reducing slowly. So because of all these factors, we can see in the coming future the poverty levels coming down. But now the social scientists move ahead and ask few summer questions. What does actually the poverty mean? A man who is not able to feed himself for the minimum requirement of the biological management of the body is considered as a person under the poverty line. But if he just feeds his tummy, is it enough to say that he is above the poverty line? Is he really educated? Is he getting the chance to get educated? Is he having the good social status? Is he having the equality in the society for him? So all these are unanswerable questions. That is the reason why now social scientists started to argue that instead of stating it as poverty, let us put it as human poverty, where human are deprived of social equality, deprived of education. So this can upgrade the human life. We can understand this like poverty is not just feeding themselves, it is also backwardness in their life. We need to achieve that equality in the society. We need to end the gender inequality. We need to have the dignity of the poor, and we need to provide huge job opportunities for everyone and provide education for them. If we are able to achieve this, this would be a challenging task of the next century, because now our target is to reduce the percentage of people who are able to feed their food should come down. Once this target is achieved for the present decade, the coming centuries and the decades, we may target to achieve the targets like gender equality and dignity of the poor in the coming generations. Now we have come up to the end of the lesson. Till now we have discussed about what is poverty, what are the levels of poverty in our country, in every state, global scenario, then what are the steps taken by the government, anti-poverty programs, how and what are the challenges that are ahead for us, and what was the now outcome. So as I mentioned earlier in the starting point of the lesson, poverty is a lesson which ends up saying that poverty has to be handled on a very large scale by renaming it as human poverty and considering various other aspects also into criteria. So it's not just only feeding of food for any person makes him above the poverty line. The backwardness in his life also should be eradicated, and enormous opportunities has to be provided for them by right education, equal status in the society, and the dignity of the labor. All these will be the future targets for us in the next coming decades.